They say change in Rugby League is as good as a rest. However, the challenge now is to make the change count and go more than one better in 2021. Yes, hello and welcome back to the Sideline Chat podcast, the one-stop shop for Rugby League. I'm Connor Marcellus and joined in studio by Mark Henry as per last week. And today we're here to talk about the next four teams as we pick up from on the east side of Hull. From West Hull with Hull FC to the east side of the city as we talk about Hull Kingston Rovers, the Leeds Rhinos, Challenge Cup champions, the Leigh Centurions, and the Salford Red Devils. Right, let's get on to talking about Hull KR because it's sort of interesting. They had probably the largest off-field recruitment drive ahead of 2020. We're talking 18 players joining up the Robins in 2020. What are your thoughts?
That's massive. Like, for a team to gain 18 players, it's hardly unheard of nowadays. So probably the clubs nowadays are more likely to lose that many players than gain that many players. But somehow Hull KR pulled it off and they did reasonable.
Well, I wouldn't say finishing 11th and being de facto wooden spooners is reasonable. I mean, you sort of hear the expression that money can't buy you success or buys you happiness. Unfortunately, Tony Smith did not have either of those. Despite their early promise in their win over Wakefield in round one, it quickly disintegrated any hope of making the playoffs. And they had the worst win record, apart from the Toronto Wolfpack while they were still in it, but sitting 1-5. That's not good. Even if the side above you is 0-6.
Well, no, it's not at all. I don't know what it must have come down to. Lack of defence or lack of attack or something. But to be 1-5, but then the team to have 0-6, did you say?
Yep.
0-6, and you're still below them. I don't know how that works out, but it somehow happened.
Well, this was their worst result in the first stage of the season. Valentine's Day against Leeds. 52-10.
Ooh, yeah, that's got to hurt them.
Well, that's one massacre that many people will look kinder on than others.
Yep.
And it was practically the same story coming out of lockdown. And I think they were facing Warrington first up, and that was just a walkover from the Wolves.
Well, playing Warrington, it's always going to be a bit of a hard task to beat them, but it clearly showed.
This is what piqued my interest, though. There were 3 results that they got, 3 wins. You want to know who they beat? They beat Wigan, 34-18, and they were dominating most of that game.
Yep.
They lost against St Helens, but it was only by a last-minute drop goal. And they beat Salford right on the full-time siren.
I mean, beating Wigan and narrowly losing to St Helens, that's impressive. And then beating Salford, that would have been a tough grudge match.
So basically, even though they got the wooden spoon, think of it this way. They took on 2019's top 3 sides, and they came away victorious twice. So there is promise in this whole KR side, but they failed to show it throughout the rest of the year otherwise. Yeah. As for their best player, I think Jordan Abdul was a standout player for all of them, and definitely a bright light in the spine for the attack. I mean, 3 tries and 10 try assists, which is equal 10 with someone like Toby King, who finished inside the top 6 and 3rd overall. Well, and of course, Ben Crooks was top try scorer for the Robins and 5th overall. So there's some promise for this Rovers side, but they need some experienced players or just some good players in key positions.
Definitely. But they're showing it in signs of improvement, so hopefully in 2021 they can be up there a bit more and compete more with the top teams of the Super League and maybe give everyone a bit of a scare at top end of town.
Well, like their 2019-20 off-season recruitment drive, their 2020-2021 exits are just as many as they were coming in. Harvey Levette, after a loan deal with them, and of course his contract ending with the Warrington Wolves, has now joined Salford. There's at least 4 on this list that have joined the Leigh Centurions: Jamie Ellis, Matty G, Nathaniel Petteru, and Ryan Briley. Co-captain Wella Haraki was let go, yet to find a club. Will Oakes joining Dewsbury. Mitch Garbutt joining Toulouse, Carl Trout yet to find a club, Daniel Murray joining Halifax, and Adam Rooks joining the Bradford Bulls.
Yep.
I think the gains makes it interesting though. They get Brad Takarangi from the Parramatta Eels, who's very versatile. I think most likely he would end up as a back rower, given he was given the number 11. Picking up Lewis Johnson from Warrington, Albert Vete from the Melbourne Storm, Corbin Sims from the St George Illawarra Dragons, and I think this is probably the biggest signing they have, Ryan Hall from the Sydney Roosters.
Definitely, Ryan Hall is a big signing for him. For Hall, sorry, but he's a star player, no doubt about that. But whether he can stay stays injury free, we'll see what happens. And if he gets consistent game time, which no doubt about it, he definitely will because of his calibre.
I think he didn't get the fairest time at the Roosters. I mean, he came there basically injured as he tore his ACL in his final game playing Toulouse. And even when he did start, I mean, he played well, but he just couldn't find the try line.
No, he couldn't.
The closest he ever got last year, round 9 up the Queensland Country Bank Stadium, one forward pass. I'm just sitting there and it's like, oh my God, come on. Are you joking me? He was that close.
Close, but not quite close enough, as they say. But it's just a poor
And
error.
even when he was playing in, I think it was part of the Roosters' biggest win over the Broncos about 5 weeks earlier, he couldn't get over either. I mean, he was playing on the outside of Josh Morris, and Brett Morris could swing around from fullback, and he still couldn't get over. I mean, come on.
It was just a bit unlucky in NRL, to be honest.
Or was he on the other side because Tupou was there? No, wait.
He was against... He was in at number 5.
No, Brett Morris was there. I thought he was in he mightn't have been now. Oh well, the comment section can fact check that for us. But yeah, I think Corbin Sims, I mean, probably only one of the very few Fijians to join, but the second of the Sims clan to make his way over there after following the footsteps of his older brother Ashton.
Yep.
So forward strength is very good, but I think the halves will be the biggest issue for Tony Smith to work with because he lost his first choice goal kicker in Jamie Ellis, and I think that puts more pressure on not only Jordan Abdul, but it also puts pressure on who's left, Joe Keys and Mikey Lewis. I think they will be under pressure just as much as Abdul is.
Definitely. But you had to see who else are in this squad that he's already been there. So you got strike weapons, obviously, as we already mentioned, Ryan Hall. Sean Kenny-Dow, he can score. And Greg Minigan, yep, he's another one. And you got Adam Quinlan at fullback. That's speed in the whole back line. No doubt about it. And then, like we've already mentioned, Vete, Hall, Sims and Takarani all coming into the side. They bring a lot of experience as well. So hopefully that will bring them up more into the fight.
I think Takarangi's a bit of a shrewd acquisition because, I mean, he's a big body and he's got an offload on him, doesn't he?
Oh, definitely he does. So the other players in that team, when they're around him, they have to make sure that they're on their game and get ready for an offload that can happen at any second.
I honestly don't see the Robins doing any better or any worse than they did last year. But it's not all doom and gloom for them. I don't see them getting relegated. Last year, the Robins were 11th on the table and were the Wooden Spooners in an 11-team competition. I'm going to say there is no change and they finish 11th again.
Well, like I said, with the back line, they've got the forwards of Leonard, Hadley, Vete, Sims, etc. and Matt Parcell at dummy half. So I got a feeling they could be a force to be reckoned with, which other teams should be worried about, and I reckon they'll finish fourth.
Fourth on the table.
Yep. Have a massive improvement on 2020.
So one that thinks bottom of the table and the other that thinks the top 6 playoffs.
Definitely.
Well, make of that as you will. And I'm not going to say, well, you should just probably be careful because I think the other side of the city of Hull might be looking for your head.
Yeah, more than likely.
Well, let's just leave it at that then. All right. Well, that's the Hulls out of the way. Now we move on to the Leeds Rhinos, the 2020 Challenge Cup champions.
Yep.
Well, I think Richard Agar has definitely made some improvements to the roster that he inherited after they sacked David Furner back in 2019. Luke Gale, I think, was probably was a risk signing him, considering he had 2 ACL injuries in the last 3 or so years. But it has paid off. I mean, he delivered one of his better years, not Man of Steel worthy, but at the same time, he was on the park and he was playing. And I mean, 14 appearances he made, 4 tries, 11 try assists, 3 match-winning drop goals, and kicked it with conversion rates 13 from 18, leading the Rhinos to Challenge Cup victory and playoff football for the first time in 3 years.
Well, that's sometimes risky signings like him with having coming off with 8 ACL injuries. Sometimes they work out, and clearly in this instance it has, and by far it has worked out well for him.
Well, it didn't work off initially, but I think it was all just combinations. And I think the Rhinos started gaining some steam up, and by the time you reached March, they were 5-1, top of the table. I mean, and they had blitzed Toronto, they blitzed Warrington, but they did get put to the sword by Hull FC, and then, as we mentioned just previously, Hull KR 52-10 on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
And that remarkable game that there's meant to be round 2 fixture between them and the Huddersfield Giants. I mean, to come back from 26-6 down with 15 minutes to go and win that. Conrad Hurrell, Reece Martin Conrad Hurrell scores the winning try to get it up to 26-24.
Yep.
Reece Martin kicks the goal, 26-26, golden point extra time, and then not even 1 minute in, Luke Gale, drop goal, 27-26 win.
It just proves that anything can happen in a game. Comebacks, like being 26-6 down and winning by a point in extra time. It's a funny game, Rugby League, and who knows what's going to happen. Like, we think something's going to happen, but then something else happens, and we try and predict something's going to happen, but then the opposite happens. So,
well, it certainly does. I mean, they could get smashed by Wigan and they can get smashed by St Helens, but they still do enough to qualify for the top 6 after winning the Challenge Cup. Again, it took a drop goal from Luke Gale to seal victory over Salford. And first time in 3 years that they made the playoffs, finishing 5th overall. But as we mentioned last week, they were just bounced out early by the Catalan Dragons. I mean, you can't afford to lose that first half an hour of the game.
no.
And they just couldn't recover. And they ended up losing 26-14.
Well, really, the first 20 to 25 minutes of a game is really critical, because if you don't get that right, and that the other team will pounce, and then you'll just fall behind and you'll try and come back later, but it doesn't always pay off. But it just comes down to game day, really, and how you approach the game and your tactics.
Yeah, it definitely depends on tactics and the players you have in your arsenal at the time. So far, Adam Cuthbertson has left to join the York City Knights on their quest for a Super League berth. It could happen this year for them, or soon in the future, who knows. Dom Crosby has entered retirement, and Musa Mustafa has joined Hull Kingston Rovers on a 1-year loan deal.
Yep. Speaking also of retirement, front, we've got Stevie Ward, who also has retired.
It's sad that he had to retire this way.
Very much so. We've got Simon Fargai, who's been released.
Family reasons. It's definitely understandable.
Oh yeah, definitely, especially with the year we've had and all that.
Or still having some parts of the world.
Yes. Reece Evans has gone to Bradford, and Wellington Albert, who's gone to Kearley Cougars. Sorry for the pronunciations. But so far, there's still time to go. They've signed one player. I was saying Tenevado from the Penrith Panthers.
Well, that's not actually true at the moment because in recent days they've also announced the signing of Fijian international King Vuniyawa from the New Zealand Warriors.
Oh, there you go.
So
Someone's ahead
they're
of
propping
me.
up their forward pack all right. But with guys like Sam Walters, this towering 6'7" back rower in their top 30, he's going to get some game time.
Oh, definitely. Being that too.
And Bodine Thompson has also got a full-time contract with Leeds. It's going on about the fallout from the Toronto Wolfpack.
Yep.
Looking ahead for this year, they've got a very good settled squad at the moment. Biggest challenge for them is what we in Super League like to call the Wembley hangover. Basically, where you win the Challenge Cup and then you're stuck at the after party for God knows how long. I mean, Hull FC have won it twice in a row, and it probably could mean they've been experiencing this since 2017. Warrington, they've experienced the Wembley hangover from running second on the table in 2019 to finishing fourth and being bounced out by Castleford in tight quarters. And Leeds is the same story here. They won the Challenge Cup and then Catalan just destroyed them.
It's kind of like a grand final too in some instincts. Like if you go and win it or make it, generally, not always, but some teams don't quite get back up there the following year, while others do, depending on the team and the squad you've got and coaching and all that. But
I think most people would remember the most infamous case of the Wembley hangover with the Leeds Rhinos, their treble-winning year in 2015. The League Leaders' Shield, the Challenge Cup, and the Grand Final, they've won in all 1 year.
that's
Only time in history that the treble has been claimed. And you know what happened to Leeds the year after?
they
Finished ninth in the
yeah,
qualifiers, but they survived, then went back, won the championship again, and yeah. Now they've avoided that, I think. So last year, the Rhinos finished 5th on the table and were in the elimination playoffs. I think if they can keep Luke Gale fit, they can do it again, provided they can stand up to Wigan and St Helens. So I'm going to say they're going to finish 5th again.
Well, speaking of Luke Gale, being in the halves, you got Robert Louis alongside him, who no doubt is a good player as well. So, and they've got experience and experienced halves and strike power, and they keep the halves fit, healthy. They will. The halves could be, as I said last week with, I can't remember what team it was, but could be another one that's got a.
You were talking Huddersfield last week.
With one of the best halves combinations. I reckon Louis and Gale could be one of them as well. They've got plenty of depth in their squad, which is always a good thing. The Rhinos, they could be a major threat at the top of the ladder come the end of the season, but I feel it will be too little too late for the Rhinos. So I think they will finish in 8th with a late charge to try and make the playoffs, but I think, like I said, too little too late for the Rhinos.
Well, there you go. It could be possible. You're blacklisted from entering anywhere in West Yorkshire, especially the town of Leeds. But we'll see about that. I mean, you can't travel there at the moment, but I think if you do, if they recognise you and your voice, I'm not going to be there to help you. You're on your own.
Yeah.
So one that says in the playoffs, the other one says just on the outside.
Yes.
Your funeral. No, I don't think they're at extreme, but still.
Oh, who knows?
Now, we got to talk about the Betfred Super League. I mean, that's what we've been doing for the last fortnight. But they've decided their original plans to start on the 11th of March have actually decided to be pushed back by 2 weeks. According to the Betfred Super League themselves, they've decided, after consideration and discussion with the clubs and their main broadcaster of Sky Sports, they decided to move the season and start date back by 2 weeks so they can at least have fans in the stands when they're actually playing.
That's a good idea. They're trying to get fans back to obviously help bring the obviously fans back and the economic growth back into the comp and help the teams lift. Well, not lift, but like help the teams.
Not think you're playing in front of a ghost crowd.
Yeah. And it'll help the atmosphere come back and the players, like they're already willing to play to represent their club and fans, but with their fan support behind it, it'll just lift them that little bit more.
Yeah, like the energy you get from playing in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
I mean, Leeds would be a good example of that because you've got that south stand and the band.
Yep.
And in the south stand, I just think it will also coincide with the vaccination rollout as well across the north of England. I mean, it's not as bad as the situation in London, but they got to get going with that.
Well, it's starting, so let's hope they can continue rolling that out and hopefully see crowds back, as they said to on March 25th.
You said when we started that you think the fixtures list will come out within 2 weeks each from that point.
I said, roundabout.
Do you still stand by those comments?
Yep, I still stand by them.
Well, at this stage, they said later date, so we'll see if it is what you say, or it might be even in February when they have things a bit more sorted out.
Maybe. It's a waiting game to see who's playing who come round one and for the whole season.
Yeah, it definitely is. All right, continuing on into the second half of our team previews for this week, we now move on to the new boys, the Leigh Centurions.
Who make a welcome return to the Super League.
After a 3-year absence. Well, they haven't necessarily got a finish in the championship because that was abandoned after coronavirus really started to take hold. They only got about 5 games in. But they did rather well. They are actually in the top 5, especially and their defence was their pride and joy, to be honest. Against the newly branded Halifax Panthers, it was only their worst defensive performance, conceding more than 2 tries. But they were on fire. Defence was rock solid, and they had a narrow defeat to Hull KR in the original structure of the Challenge Cup before not being invited to continue participation.
Well, Leigh, they're coming back in, so like for the first time in 3 years, so it'll be interesting to see how they work out, if they can be competitive. They might be a little bit slow at the start, but then they might come on strong at the end of the year. But who knows? It all depends on how they've structured their squad.
Well, speaking of the squad that they have assembled, they have let some faces go. Ryan Inch joining Oldham, Sam Brooks and Martin Rigid joining Swinton, Adam Walker just released, Bet and Reynolds joining Toulouse Olympique, Brad Holroyd off to Workington, Cameron Field off to Featherstone, Cameron Scott returning to Hull FC, Greg McAnally joining Whitehaven, and Lewis Bienick, who was playing for Leigh, returned to Hull and of course is now with Castleford.
Yes. And you also got players like Adam Walker, who was being released.
We just mentioned Adam Walker.
Sorry, my bad. And Danny Addy, we haven't mentioned him. Because
no, we haven't.
He's gone to the Salford Red Devils.
Yeah, you'll offer some good utility value there.
Another loss there. And Martin
Richard. Also mentioned him just now.
Yeah.
But the incoming players, they've definitely decided that they like raiding Toronto. That they've got no one left. I think Chase Stanley and Josh McCrone are the only 2 players left they got over there at the moment.
Well, Toronto, we don't even know they're still going to be around.
Well, they're talking of a revival. They're talking about getting all the players back for one exhibition match sometime this year.
Well, I don't think the players from the Centurions will go back there.
Well, if the payments are settled.
Well, yeah.
With the players' union and that.
Well, yes, that. But it's depending if the Centurions want to or will allow them to go and play an exhibition match. Because it's a risk of getting injured and etc.
And the fact that they might have to travel to Canada for it.
Yes, that too. Which is bit of a slight time difference. So, and depending on where they do it, where it slots into their season, like if it's at the end of the season, then yeah. But if it's during the season, then it's kind of going to be.
We could probably save this more for next week. Just talk about Toronto's resurrection plans.
Yep.
But the players they do bring in, Blake Wallace, Matty Russell, and Joe Miller. So they've got no shortage of halves that they can work with. Ben Flower, probably the big one, joining from Wigan.
That's definitely the biggest one.
Adam Sidlow joining from Toronto. Craig Mullen, also from Wigan. And then the whole KR contingent of Matty G, Jamie Ellis, Nathaniel Petteru, and Ryan Briley.
Yes.
And also, a young Warrington centre, Keenan Brand, joins the Leigh Centurions on a 1-year loan deal.
And you got James Bell from Toulouse Olympique, who's signed. And Lewis Tierney from Cavaliers.
As we mentioned last week.
Yep. I'm so sorry for the pronunciations of players.
Well, to put it bluntly, Leigh are going to have the toughest year out of everyone.
No doubt.
There is £21 million that the RFL hands out in central funding. Leigh have only received £1 million. Every other club receives closer to $2 million at 1.8.
That's a bit of a disadvantage.
So that's the agreement the 12th team gets for being the promoted side.
Yep.
They do have deep pockets though through their owner of Derek Beaumont, so he would be willing to make up any difference if it means pouring in his own money.
Yeah.
And they have recruited very well. There is some good experienced players in there that could do a job. Ben Flower would probably emerge as a forward-pack leader.
Yeah, it's the biggest standout one of all of them.
Yeah, but I think the reason Leigh are back again was because they got relegated. They've only, out of 26 years of Super League, they've only been in it for 3 years, and it was all one season stays. In 2005, in 2017, and now. I mean, it's not fault of their own. It's the same problem the London Broncos faced. They were the fresh boys back after 5 years in 2019, and then they were gone on at the end of the year. So they've rebuilt their side to this point, but are they ready to actually make a dent and stay?
Well, we have to wait and see how they go.
I'm going to say they finished 12th and they returned to the championship in 2021. I'm sorry, but that's the only way I see it happening.
Well, no doubt Ben Flower will be straight into the squad, automatically picked come round one. No doubt. Unless he gets a training, like he gets injured in pre-season, which for the hope of the Centurions he doesn't. But we have to wait and see. You got a lot of players eyeing to get into the squad. So John Duffy, the coach, will have to watch carefully over to see who can play, like who gets the nod ahead of others. So it's going to be a bit of a difficult year as they're coming back into Super League from the Championship. So I'll see them coming 9th at the conclusion.
You think 9th?
Yep.
Well,
in a difficult year, but we'll finish 9th.
So one that thinks they go back to the Championship, and the other that thinks they'll actually extend their stay by at least one more year.
Yep.
All right. Fair enough. And moving on to the final team of the day, we have got the Salford Red Devils. Heading into the 2020 season, it was always going to be a challenge after losing Jackson Hastings to the Wigan Warriors. And it turns out it was just that, a challenge. I mean, their opener against St. Helens, grand final rematch first up. I mean, 48-8.
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows you where they are in contrast to where the elite sides are. But they are a smaller club, as we got to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Between February and March, they only managed one win, minus the Toronto victory they had.
Yeah.
at where Reece Williams was compared to Mo Salah from the Premier League. But they did beat Wigan in round 7, so that is a bit of a confidence booster.
Definitely.
And after the lockdown, it was pretty much the same story. I mean, they put Hull FC to the sword, 54-16.
Yeah, that's a bit of a
Well, that was only their first game of Andy Last, so things weren't always going to go right the first time up.
well, no.
And then they were put to the sword by Leeds themselves. Yeah, not pretty.
No.
But they had their best run of form to the back end of the year in September and October. A combination of 5 wins in both league and cup to make the Challenge Cup final for the first time since 1969.
Well, that is a massive drought.
Yeah, that is like if the Sharks were there, but it's just like, hey, we've been here longer than you, and we haven't tasted as much, and we've tasted more silverware than you have.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just missed out by that drop goal. But they did finish the year strongly. They did knock off Catalan 42-24.
That's a
And again, the Dragons were in front, so they came back and rallied.
that's a massive points comeback, not only but also a massive confidence booster for the team.
And they got the best of Wakefield Trinity, which I think was a 58-0 drubbing. I'll correct myself next week.
Did the other team not turn up or something?
You'd think that would have happened.
Being that, but they were just a better team on the day, clearly.
Yeah. So I think Luke Yates, he was highly rated at the London Broncos when he was there, and of course he was one of the 3 Broncos players that joined Salford ahead of last season, and he didn't disappoint in his first year at the AJ Bell Stadium. More than 640 tackles in the middle and 3 offloads. And he was very much the glue in the Salford forward pack. So to improve his running game and his offloading skill, but not for Salford because he then joined the Huddersfield Giants following Ian Watson to the John Smith Stadium.
And that's going to hurt them a little bit. But who knows, they might be able to replace him, a like replacement in their squad or who they have signed.
Well, as well as Yates, they lost Joey Lussick to the Eels, so their first choice dummy half is gone. Mark Flanagan's retired. Chris Wellams joined Featherstone. Gil Dudson with the Catalan Dragons. Connor Jones joining the Featherstone Rovers. And Ed Chamberlain has joined the London Broncos on a year-long loan.
Yeah, that's another one that's hurt them a lot, Gil Dudson. You can't keep all your players.
Yeah, but their recruitment has done very well. Elijah Taylor joining from the West Tigers. Harvey Levette joining from Hull KR and Warrington.
Yeah.
Darcy Lussick, so one Lussick goes in as the other goes out.
Yeah.
Danny Addy, Sam Buckley from the Ottawa Aces as they decided to postpone their start until next year. Joe Burgess and Morgan Escaray joining from the Wigan Warriors, so they have a new attacking option on the left edge and potentially a replacement for Niall Evalds.
And you've also got Jack Wills, who's also signed from Wigan Warriors.
Yes, he definitely has.
So that's 3 from Wigan Warriors.
And there is continued speculation, according to League Express, that Dec Patton will leave Warrington to join Salford, which will create a bit of competition in the halves over there between Tui Lolohea and Kevin Brown, the incumbents.
Yep.
Also a fresh face over there would be the new boss, Richard Marshall, successful in his time at Halifax and, of course, was assistant coach to both Justin Holbrook and Christian Wolfe in St. Helens back-to-back years.
So it's definitely he knows what he's doing if he's had experience under them 2 players. Not players, coaches. Sorry.
The biggest test for him, he's coming up to the Betfred Super League, which across England and France is the elite level. And I mean, he has had success with Halifax. He's taken them to qualify as in top 5 playoffs for the £1 million game. But this is the big leagues now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's had some shrewd acquisitions, and of course, Callum Watkins on that right edge will definitely help out a lot with leadership and experience. But the forward pack problem will be something that he'll have to overcome with the loss of Luke Yates and Gil Dudson.
Yeah, definitely. Especially, like as you said, Luke Gates and Gil Dudson. But let's see if they can do it.
Last year, Salford finished, I believe, 8th on the table, but he's got a competitive side. I think this side on paper can compete. And when you're adding Burgess and Escaré, they haven't had happy times. I mean, Escaré was in and out of the side. He was even loaned off to Wakefield for a time. And Joe Burgess, injury troubles. He's missed out on Wigan's grand final victories twice, both in 2016. He was at the Rabbits. 2018, he got injured and his place was taken by Don Manfredi. And last year, he was there, but Makinson and Wellesby.
Well, Makinson and Wellesby are both top players as well, so it was kind of going to be a bit hard for him to get there, but let's see if he can do it.
I think, while I do say they are competitive, I don't think they're in a position to challenge for the top 6, but they're definitely going to be in that middle ground that where if they get some good direction or if Richard Marshall surprises us, it could be something else. So I'm going to say they finished 9th. What about you, Mark?
Well, the back line. They've got Escare, Burgess, Callum Watkins, Dan Sargentson, and Christian Inu, which is experience, plenty of it. Strike power, plenty of it. The halves of Lola Hiller and Kevin Brown. If they can control the game, it'll be smooth sailing. We'll see how they two go. But they have also who's going to be the top goal kicker. They've got multiple, not only in their starting side, but in their squad. So they've got, as I said, Escari, Inu, Lola Hiller, Chris Atkin, Ed Chamberlain, and Ken Seo. They're all goal kickers.
But Chamberlain's with London, remember?
That's right, my apologies. But they've still got a lot of goal kickers.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, they've got options. I'm not denying that.
Oh, definitely not. So I feel they can go very, very deep into the playoffs into 2021. So I think come round 27, they'll be second overall.
Second? So you think they get a week off?
Oh, I think they will.
All right.
On paper, their squad's good. Well, not. I shouldn't say so. Their squad's one of the ones up there. So be scared, Warrington, St Helens, and Wigan.
All right, that sounds like a threat you're making. From 1 in 9th to 1 in the top 2 who for the Salford Red Devils there. And that's all our teams for this week. Now, I want to close this thing off because I think this has not received the attention it deserves. And so here it is. What do you think is the most passionate sport in India at the moment?
Cricket, after they won their test match series against Australia by, I can't remember how many, but India and cricket. Cricket will be the biggest one for them at the moment.
Well, what do you think they're doing in Calcutta at the moment? Are they playing with Kookaburra-style cricket bats or are they playing with something else?
Probably Kookaburra cricket bats?
Wrong. No, what they have been doing, they've been picking up a Steeden and they've been playing some good old-fashioned rugby league.
Well, it's good. Another nation getting into the wonderful sport that rugby league is, and hopefully it picks up and be at the equal top most with cricket, if not even overtake cricket as the most played / watched sport over there.
It probably won't happen, but if we can make a sizable dent in India, in Calcutta, where a local derby between the Jaguars and the Panthers, probably both taking the name Calcutta.
Yeah, probably.
Played in front of the Australian High Commissioner, Barry O'Farrell, former West Tigers chairman, I believe.
Yep, that sounds about right. And also the former New South Wales Premier.
Yeah, I believe that's the case. So I understand, while watching this game live in front of a select audience, he's also delivered a message from the Australian Rugby League chair, Peter V'landys, in support of the game's growth in India and hopeful of a growing dynamic in the Australian-India sporting relationship.
Well, that would be good. A bit more firepower between us and the Indians, but hopefully, like I said, it kicks off for them and we see the game grow and they create their own competition or join.
Well, they would have to apply for the membership probably of the Asia Pacific Rugby League first before
Yeah,
being granted membership status by the IRL, the International Rugby League Board.
yeah.
But I think the consumer demand, and after this recent test series in cricket we've mentioned between Australia and India, I think there is a lot of opportunities you can have. I think because no one was talking about test tours or kangaroos tours in Great Britain, what about India? It probably some point, maybe say 2045 season, you're looking kangaroo tours where you play a free test match series against India and then maybe one against an England/Great Britain side as a fourth test option. What do you make of that?
So kind of like the cricket, but in league,
Exactly.
except for Great Britain, England at the end.
I definitely think because they're cricket mad, they'll also think of the skills. They'll be good with their hands. So I would think if they get the kicking game right, they'll develop a lot of strong halves.
Oh, that is so true. Like as you mentioned, great with hands. That's what you need in league. Nice, soft hands that can pass, kick. I mean, who knows? It could. Hopefully, it works out well for them, and they can work their way up and be on the international stage, like you said, against Australia and the likes.
Well, this is a sort of like a statement we've got from the general manager of the Rugby League India Federation saying that their team has been working closely with the International Rugby League based out of Australia for the past few years to set this thing up. So this is only just fairly recent over Christmas. The inaugural tournament in Calcutta was truly amazing, and Barry's presence just gave everyone a big boost, and citing that there is huge potential in our country and very focused on the grassroots development across the districts, the schools, and the non-government organisations. And they actually have a date here for a next tournament that they're going to be playing in Bangalore with the winning team in Calcutta to participate there.
Sounds good.
So they're moving fast.
What's the date?
January 30th for
So-
the next Rugby League India Federation tournament in Bangalore.
So just after our next episode next week,
Let me check the
'Cause
verify
today's
the
the
dates on that.
20th.
20. It would be 3 days after our week 3 episode. So
So-
we'll try and find something to bring back about that. So we'll
Yeah.
offer up continuing coverage from on the Telegraph India and the Rugby League India Federation about their next moves in Calcutta. But
Anything about the scores between the game that was played
well,
between the two, or between the two teams?
I think they say the final in this maiden with a select audience, they say it was only a good win for the Jaguars over the Panthers, both Calcutta teams. I think there was somewhere else where they said there were 4 teams were out for the day's games with the innovation that all the officiating was taken on by... Oh, okay. Oh, no, here we go. In the final, close encounter, 9-8, Calcutta
Ooh.
Jaguars downing the Calcutta Panthers.
Mate, that's for rugby league to start kicking off in India. That is a good start. Close, competitive. That's what fans love to see. Close, tight, intense games that no one can predict what can happen. And it'll be at the edge of your seat stuff. And clearly, being 9-8, that happened in front of, like you said, a select audience.
I definitely think with Peter V'landys, I think this is going to be part of the long-term solution to developing the international game. If we can get India on board with this, and I think this might take about 5 years to build up some strong grassroots and a domestic competition, maybe 10 years. But if we can get India involved in the game, we've got potentially 1.3 billion eyes that can give them something to cheer on while the cricket between March and October while the cricket's down for the year. So we can give them a winter sport and a summer sport. And if we can grow this, there'll be more international opportunities. And hopefully the IOC take notice And Rugby League Nines is made an international sport if we get India on side of this.
Definitely having that many more eyes on the sport not only grows it, but it can expand, and hopefully, like, if it's only that one game, they might tune into the Super League or the NRL and learn the game more and the rule set, which might get more people on board.
And then they can tune into their domestic comp and they know what exactly they're watching.
And then it'll just get more people involved into growing it, like more teams, more people involved, and it'll just keep on growing from there and it'll take off.
I'll give you the final word again. Abandon this idea, or should we actually see this through with Rugby League in India?
See it through. Definitely see it through. I'd love to see Rugby League in India and give another nation onto the international stage, and
maybe country 48. It's in the IRLs. I'm with you. We should see this one through,
Definitely.
Especially with the rivalry between Australia and India and other sports.
Definitely. It will just bolster that rivalry even more.
Yep, it certainly will. All right, well, that is full time again from us. Next week, we will be looking at the reigning champions, St. Helens, and Wakefield, Orrington, and the league leaders, the Wigan Warriors. And what will become of the Toronto Wolfpack? Are they destined for League One again, or are they destined for something else? We'll offer more of our opinion on where Toronto go from here next time. Until then, Mark Henry and Con Marcellus, we'll see you next time on the Sideline Chat.